Nikita Kucherov has 2 straight Art Ross Trophy wins. Can he make it 3 this season? Plus, who are the top 5 players on the Lightning roster right now? We'll talk about it on today's Locked on Lightning podcast.
You're Locked on Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked on Lightning your first listen of the day, each and every day. We are your free daily Tampa Bay Lightning podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I want to start out by shouting out our everydayers, those of you who tune into every single show every day. We love you. We appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan, and I'm joined by the Benchmark International to my hockey arena, Greg Steven. Greg.
Good morning, Nick. Happy Friday to everyone. Looking forward to discussing some Kucherov today.
Yeah, and rest in peace, Amalie Arena. We hardly knew thee. Thank you for the memories. I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. We've got a fun one today, Greg. So the Locked on NHL right now is doing a series in which all the hosts are going to vote for the top 100 NHL players right now. To get started, we had to nominate who we thought were the top 5 Lightning players on the team right now. Greg and I are going to debate this in a little bit because I think number 1's pretty obvious. After that, I think you can make some good cases. So we're going to talk about that coming up on today's show. But first, though, we are continuing our player preview series with the man who leads the NHL in scoring for 2 straight years, Nikita Kucherov. Greg, Art Ross win yet again, 37 goals, 84 assists last year for 121 points. Did it in 78 games. You also saw, I think, his defensive presence go up a little bit. Not really a surprise considering the team's defense has gone up a lot. A little bit of question mark because they shuffled his lines a little bit. I mean, all those years playing with Stamkos, then finally got accustomed to Braden Point. Now you bring in Jake Gensel. You're wondering how that dynamic was going to work. Turns out it worked pretty well. Yeah. What do you think of Kucherov's season last year?
Fantastic, right? I don't think there's another word to describe it, especially he's over 30 years old. His 3rd highest points in a single season, right? And you had mentioned the defensive side of the game improving, and a lot of people hate the plus-minus statistic as a whole. But he was plus 22, which was his 4th best in his career so far. So just great. You can tell he's, he's being more mindful of the two-way game. And I want to toss out the fact that he won Ted Lindsay. I think that's, in my opinion, the most impressive award, just because who has more merit in making these determinations than the players themselves? And look, if they're all voting for you, you're the guy, right? And I would say Kuch is the guy.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I love that you bring up the point with the players too, because we're going to talk about this here. In fact, let's just get into it now. But it feels like despite back-to-back Art Ross wins, Kucherov is one of only 10 players in the entire history of the NHL to win at least 3 scoring titles. And yet it just always seems like when you talk about the upper echelon of the NHL, people talk about your Connor McDavids, your Leon Draisaitl's, your Cale Makar's, Nathan McKinnon is always in that conversation. It just seems like nobody ever really talks about Kucherov as being one of those top tier consensus best players in the NHL, most exciting players in the NHL. And it's been that way for a while, really.
Yeah. I think there are a few hot takes on this subject that I could throw your way. Okay. I think the first is that he is Russian, and that does play a part. Politics play a part in everything in life. And given what has gone on in world events with Russia, obviously, I think the United States as a whole has kind of diminished Russian talent here. And he, unfortunately does fall into that category. And I just think that a bias that occurs, being in America during that kind of global event. So nothing against anyone, but that's what is happening with him. I think the second thing you can say is that people love change, and the Lightning for a while were running to the cup, right? 3 times in a row. He became like a villain in a lot of people's eyes. I think, they don't want to see him flourish anymore. He's done it, and I think people want change. People want a different, franchise to come up and win. And I think that kind of, they want to see McKinnon go up and do it again, right? They want to see McDavid do it again. And I think those guys, everyone wants to see them win right now, and people just don't care to see the Lightning win anymore.
It is interesting because you talk about people want change. If you're voting like the Hart Trophy, for instance, like best player in the NHL, there's those years where Connor McDavid was just having like 130 points and everything like that. And he would finish like second and be like, well, Austin Matthews scored 60 goals and, like they had like the best year that they've had. And it's kind of like, okay, like who's really the best player in the league this season? It feels like it's kind of one of those things. I will say in terms of, I'm not sure. There's a long whole history of, kind of the NHL and the Russian players dating all the way back to like when this, like, Igor Larionov, Slava Fetisov, Makarov first kind of came over. There's been kind of a bias about sort of the way, like, Russian players play. There's a long history of that. I'm less that and just more of, I think there's maybe just so many stars in the Tampa Bay Lightning that you think of, Kucherov as like the Mikko Rantanen of the team, for instance, just like that really strong winger. For years, it kind of seemed like Stamkos was, the face of the franchise. Hedman was, Vasilevsky, and Kucherov, I think, kind of got lost in that shuffle a little bit. I think there maybe is bias there, that maybe just because there's so many other, I guess, quote unquote, household names and big guns, that Kucherov kind of got shuffled down a bit. But really, you look at him and he is, I don't think it's a hot take to say, the best winger in the NHL right now. I think he's one of the most elite playmakers in the NHL right now in terms of generating offense. And I would love for when his, I'm not going to say when his career is over, but I love for like, sort of these last couple years of maybe his prime, he starts getting some more recognition as, that guy. And maybe it starts if he can win the Art Ross again for the third time this year, because Greg, he is a favorite. I would say he is very much a favorite to do it again this year.
Yeah, I don't see why he couldn't, right? We'll see. There are a lot of talented guys, right? Like it could be. I feel like with McDavid existing and guys like even Draisaitl existing, it's just not a lock for anyone. And yes, he's a strong candidate, but those guys are hungrier than he is right now, in my opinion, because they haven't won, and they have a lot more motivators with like their age. They're younger, and I don't know. I think it'll be tricky to win a third in a row.
It has only been done a few times in NHL history. Connor McDavid was the last one to do it. And he's like the only one since I think like Gretzky in the 80s to do that. It's going to be hard, but that's sort of the beauty of the Art Ross is it's, there's no bias there. It's just who puts up the most points. Right. And if you're the Lightning, there's a lot of stuff kind of going your way this year, right? Like, there's no signs of anybody on that team regressing. I think Victor Hedman is still very much, even though he's a little bit older, still in that role where he's like that offensive setup guy. Definitely. You look at Braden Point is on the up and up. Jake Gensel is very, very much in his prime. There's nobody that's like regressing. And I think if you look at Kucherov's going to take advantage of that a little bit by having people in his prime around him. So yeah, I think if he's won it 2 years in a row, I think he should be a favorite to win it again. I don't know if he's, I would say Connor McDavid maybe is the favorite, but Kucherov is one of those guys that he's going to be top 3, top 4, top 5 in scoring at the end of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think he'll top 5 100%. I don't think there's any question that he won't, but he is getting older, so injuries become a little more prevalent in this time of your career. So you just don't know, but I think if he stays healthy and, like you said, he benefits from all the talent around him and continues to thrive on the power play, yeah, I think he gets it.
Yeah. One big negative of Kucherov's game, not necessarily maybe with skating or anything like that, but just how the last few postseasons have gone. We'll dive into Kucherov's postseason woes and a wild drought coming up in just 1 second. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. We've all been there. You guys log on early. You wait forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of the endless scrolling trying to find the best deal for you, Gametime's Zone Deals picks the best seats in your section for you. You ever wonder what your view would actually look like before you buy? The app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. And with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. There are no hidden fees. And if you're worried about what happens when plans change, the Gametime guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Lightning. Nick Morgan alongside Greg Stephen. For those of you watching us on YouTube, we switched sides because technology is stupid today. Let's talk about maybe one negative to Nikita Kucherov's game, Greg, and that is his last couple of postseasons. 0 goals against the Florida Panthers last year. 0 goals against the Florida Panthers the year before that. He has not scored, Greg, in 15 consecutive playoff games. How much of a pain point is that for the Lightning?
Okay. I have a lot to say about this, I think, and I'll start with the fact that, yes, you want Nikita Kucherov to score goals, but I would say it's not his primary role. And yes, I think he should have at least, 3 to 5 goals probably littered in those games that you just listed. I think as a whole, the Lightning have been shut down by the Cats. And I think what a lot of that is just game plan and coaching. And I think when Cooch is on the ice, when he plays against the Cats, for example, and you saw it very much so in this past postseason, right?
Yeah.
They know how to stop him. And that takes his game away. And look, the Lightning are not subtle about the fact that their whole game runs through Kucherov, right? And if you take him out of the game, you will win the series, you will win the game, you will beat the Lightning. And I think that that's what's been happening to him. And what I was going to say is this upcoming season, as far as change, like I really see the Lightning trying to adjust. They have to see this, right? Like they keep falling to this and they need to figure out a way to thrive on the power play, for example, without him. And we saw them kind of tinker with it a bit this past season, right? But I really expect them in the summer, like right now, to be trying to figure something out with that.
Yeah. It's interesting because you have a lot of depth for the Lightning now. Brandon Hagel, 90 points last year. You and I kind of debated whether he can sort of keep up that pace, maybe top 100 this year. It just seems like there's a lot of that depth. They haven't necessarily figured out how to use that in situations quite yet, which, if you're judging the scope of problems in the NHL, that's a pretty good one to have, that have so much talent that you're not exactly sure how to you fit them on, let's say, the power play 2 or something like that. I think that will come in time. Again, there's with Blashill taking the Chicago Blackhawks job, Dan Heinout coming in, there's going to, I think, also be maybe some, way, or at least like tweaks in the way like some of these units are put together. I think that'll come. I think they'll figure out how to use the depth behind Kucherov, and I think that will help Kucherov a little bit as the year goes on. Greg, looking at his game, is there anything else from this past year that you really stands out to you, either a good or a bad?
I felt like he was just all around a better player this season than he's ever been. Obviously, he's had a more productive offensive season in the past, but like not by this crazy margin. I mean, still, like we've been talking about, look at all the awards he won. It's not like he did nothing. Yeah. So he was just fantastic. Honestly, I think this coming season, I expect him to put up 100 or more again. I don't see any sort of insane regression by any means coming this season. So I think with some tweaks to the Lightning, as you mentioned, and I think with some tweaks based on what's been going on lately in the postseason, hopefully they can, combat specifically the Panthers a little better this coming season. We'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because there's not a lot of huge change in that team roster. It's just going to be like, how do the players respond? Maybe do the coaches try to do something different? Yeah. The one thing I will say, and I will say this as somebody who has kind of watched the Lightning from the outside in these past several years, and that is that the one thing I've always admired about Nikita Kucherov has just been the emotion that he plays with. Sometimes it can get him in trouble. Like we've seen some very, let's just say, too fired up Nikita Kucherov moments. Throwing his stick with 20 seconds left in his Stanley Cup final is probably one of those. But I will say that sometimes that can also be his superpower. Like you see him go into Hulk mode sometimes with a game on the line. Like he just presses like none other. He gets really aggressive in terms of trying to create a turnover, trying to get some momentum for his team. You see him just going all out, trying to create shots, trying to crash to get rebounds. You don't see that a lot with certain NHL players. And there's kind of this thing, we joke in interviews that NHL players have kind of become bland a little bit. Like how many, post-game press conferences do you see where it's, oh my God, you guys just won the Western Conference final. Yeah, it's a good team effort. And we're just going to take it one day at a time. And, all da. You can see Kucherov go out and do press conferences shirtless, chugging a Bud Light, like we need more of those kind of players in the NHL. And I joke about it for the press conference standpoint, but you need those kind of players on the ice too. You look at like the 80s and 90s, some of the best players in the NHL were the ones that got spicy on the ice and brought some of their personalities to the ice. And Kucherov is very much in that camp. I love to see it. I hope he never loses that passion that he plays with.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, the fire that lives inside that man is unmatched, right? Like you see it all the time. And like you said, it has gotten him in trouble in the past, but in the past few years, he's looked like he's really kind of got that under control for the most part. It does occasionally come out, but that happens when you're playing an emotional game. Hockey is an emotional sport, and I love the fire. It's one of the best qualities about him. A lot of people see it as like he's whining or, he's throwing a temper tantrum. What I see is a guy who's disappointed in what he did, and he wants to be better because he thinks he's the best. He knows he's the best, and he will be the best, and he will stop at nothing to do it.
You said he's the best, and he knows he's the best.
Yeah.
He's obviously the best on the Lightning right now. So who are the top 5 players behind Nikita Kucherov when it comes to the top 5 players right now on the Lightning? That's a debate we're going to have right after the break. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th, folks, write it down. That's FanDuel's Futures Day. It's a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hot takes. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment, folks. Take a flyer on the MVP race. I'm going to go a hot take here. I'm going to say Jordan Love from the Green Bay Packers is going to be your MVP this year. Crown your champion in August. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? Is it going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? No, it's probably going to be the Buffalo Bills. Or parlay your division winner, dark horses. Whatever you want, FanDuel's got it. So visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right, Greg, we are back here on Locked On Lightning. We had some homework given to us by the Locked On NHL crew. They are about to vote on the top 100 NHL players right now. It's a feature they have coming up for late, as we get closer to the start of puck drop for the season. They asked us to submit. We actually submitted 7, but we're only going to do 5. The top 5 Lightning players right now, ranked in order from the best to the 5th best. So, Greg, Kucherov's number 1. After that, you can make a lot of cases for a lot of players. Who do you have number 2?
I have Vasilevsky at number 2. I think there's no other guy who can make or break what's going to happen next season than Vasi after Kucherov. And I just think he is the guy in net. I think he's still, if you don't want to call him the best in the world anymore, he's top 3 still in the world. So I just think he is number 2.
Interesting. I did not have that. I had Victor Hedman number 2.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, I had Victor Hedman number 2. And I'll talk about Vasilevsky in a second. But to me, you mentioned there's nobody who makes or breaks somebody other than Vasilevsky. I think that's actually the case for Hedman, because he is the anchor of that blue line. And not only that, he's sort of the anchor of the offense that's coming from the blue line. And that's a big responsibility, because even though the Lightning have all these talented forwards, you need a puck-moving defenseman, a power play quarterback, somebody who can get the puck, transition it from end to end, and get play started. That, to me, is Victor Hedman. And I think that is going to be the sort of the X factor in how the Lightning offense do this season. I'm just going to go ahead and say number 3. Is it Andrei Vasilevsky? No, I put Jake Gensel.
Wow.
Number 3 this year. Yeah, I mean, you can't really ignore the stats that he's put up. And I will say this about Gensel. We are going to do our next player preview series on Jake Gensel, so we'll talk about more of this. But I think he answered a lot of not expectations, but a lot of question marks about how he was going to fit in with this Lightning squad this year. I think he is, other than Kucherov, I think a big X factor up front. I think a big linchpin in that Lightning offense. And he's just super talented. I had him as 3.
Wow. So I'll just tell you right off the bat, I don't even have Hedman or
Oh, no Hedman, no Gensel. Okay.
I have neither in my top 5.
Wow.
Yeah. So my 3rd was actually Ryan McDonagh. And the reason that I have for this is that the Lightning have such a quality offense that, yes, I think you're absolutely spot on with Hedman. Like, having a power play quarterback and a guy who can move the puck well is excellent on defense. I just think the Lightning right now, the value in like a defensive defenseman is just so much higher. Like, given how powerful they are on offense, like you almost don't even need to have a guy on D do that if your offense is thriving always, right? I don't think it's bad. I'm not trying to say that. But I do think McDonagh is just like the highest value D on the team just because of how well he can shut down like anyone.
Man, we were way off on that one, weren't we?
Yeah.
And for the record, we had to submit 7. I was very close to including McDonagh somewhere in there, because I'm with you. The defensive value he brings on that back line, I think was the biggest X factor in why that team did so much better defensively last year. So you had Vasilevsky second, McDonough third.
Yeah.
Dare I say, or dare I ask, who was number 4 if it's not Victor Hedman or Jay Gensel?
Wow. I have Anthony Cirelli as number 4.
We're way off. We're way off on gelling on this.
I don't think there is a more valuable type of forward than Cirelli, right? And he scores on the penalty kill. He kills all the penalties. He can thrive on offense. Like it's not like he's not producing offensively. He plays a lot of minutes and minutes that are difficult for a lot of other types of players. Like he fills such a niche role, and he does it at like a crazy elite level. He's one of the best players in the NHL in my mind.
I think I had Cirelli, I want to say 7th. Am my top 7 right now. Number 4, I thought you would be more behind this guy. I had Vasilevsky 4th. That was the Vasilevsky.
Okay. Yeah.
Number 5, I thought you'd be on more board with this guy, was Brandon Hagel.
I also have Brandon Hagel at 5.
Okay, so you have Brandon Hagel at 5. Okay, so we're gel on that. To me, Brandon Hagel is sort of the X factor on this whole team because 90 points, we talked about that. But to me, I think the value he brings in some of the other areas of the game is what makes him good. He's doing 90 points while also kind of being one of the main forecheckers of that Lightning crew. He's really good at sort of winning the puck or at least forcing mistakes in deep for the other team. Also just a really, really strong penalty killer. He can hurt you in a lot of different ways. That to me is somebody that I think brings a lot of value to this team. And you know what? Even if Brandon Hagel didn't score 90 last year, like if he would have scored like 60, 65, I still would argue that he is one of the top 5 players on this team just because of how many different things he brings to this club.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think it was difficult for me to even put Cirelli above him. And I think it's just because Hagel has become so much like Cirelli in my mind, but with more offensive production. And yeah, like on paper, I feel like Hagel actually is maybe above Cirelli, but I just feel like he gets there because of Cirelli, right? Like he learns from Cirelli's game to develop his own game. And they are slightly different players, but they play a very similar role. And like you said, if he put up 60, I would be like, yeah, he's the top 5 guy still. It just, there's no question. I think, yeah, it's probably Hagel 4, Cirelli 5, but yeah, I'll stick by what my original list said. I do have him at 5 with you. And yeah, he's a big piece of this team, especially with his contract and how he's locked up. And he has the thing that we were talking about earlier that Kucherov has, and that's like that emotion, right? Yeah. And you can see it on his face when he plays the sport. And that's what you love to have that on your team. And he's just like a fire guy. And I love it about him.
Yeah, I'm with you there. He's a player with a lot of passion. I think the entire NHL kind of learned his name a little bit more during the 4 Nations when he was the guy that dropped that first punch against, Matthew Tkachuk. I think we're going to have a lot of good years from Brandon Hagel. And again, like I am with you in the fact that saying I think that he doesn't need to score 90 points in next year. He doesn't even get to 100 as long as he does those those microstat things really well. He's going to be a good player for the Lightning next year. All right. So the rest of the list, we had to do a top 7. I put 0.6 and then Cirelli 7. So there's these 7 that we submitted to Locked On. So we'll when the votes get cast, Kucherov better be in that stupid top 5, man. I'm just gonna say that. That's putting the rest of the NHL hosts on notice. Kucherov better be in the top 5. When we start voting, we'll let you guys know. Look out for the full list from Locked On NHL. Also, look out for new episodes from us next week. We're going to be talking about Jake Gensel. We're going to continue our off-season Frenemy series. We're looking at booking a good one for you guys. So stay tuned. Much more to come on the Locked On Lightning. That's going to do it for us on this week's show. We'll see you next week.